It took just one man to bring one of football's greatest institutions to its knees. In less than 5 years, Josep Maria Bartomeu took FC Barcelona from global dominance to financial and sporting chaos. By the end of his presidency, the Catalan giants were drowning in €1.35 billion of debt, weighed down by failed marquee signings, and reeling from the unthinkable exit of Lionel Messi, arguably the greatest player in the club's history. But the seeds of this collapse were planted long before Bartomeu took office. But before we dive into this insane downfall, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button if you love football stories that go beyond the pitch. Subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more deep dives coming. And hit the bell icon so you never miss when we drop fresh football content. To truly understand Barcelona's downfall, we must go back to 2010 when Rosell succeeded Joan Laporta as president. Under Laporta, 2003 to 2010, Barcelona flourished both on and off the pitch. The club was built around a clear footballing identity, youth development, sustainability, and sporting excellence. The legendary La Masia Academy was the heartbeat of this golden era, producing world-class talent like Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, and Messi himself. But Rosell's vision diverged sharply. To him, success was no longer rooted in philosophy or homegrown talent, it was about profits. Take the club's shirt, for example. For over a century, FC Barcelona proudly wore unbranded kits until 2006, when the club broke tradition by displaying the UNICEF logo. But this wasn't a sponsorship. In fact, Barcelona were donating €1.5 million a year to support the organization's global work with children, a gesture that spoke volumes about the club's values. Then came 2011. Rosell replaced that symbol of goodwill with a lucrative Qatar Foundation deal worth €30 million annually. The UNICEF logo was relegated to the back of the shirt, and with it, a century-old tradition vanished. The shift was symbolic. Barcelona were becoming a different kind of club, one driven not by heritage and values, but by revenue and short-term gain. The Neymar, the club claimed they had signed the Brazilian prodigy for €57 million. In reality, the deal cost €86 million, with hidden resign in 2014. But the damage was already done. Not only had financial mismanagement taken root, but La Masia, the very academy that once fueled Barcelona's greatness, was increasingly neglected. Rosell and Veyer belt of talent slowed to a crawl. Barcelona were still winning matches on the pitch, but beneath the surface, the cracks had become canyons. Bartomeu's Barcelona, from fortune to failure. By the time Rosell stepped down in 2014, the damage had already been done. But what came next would take FC Barcelona from troubled to nearly broken. Josep Maria Bartomeu, Rosell's longtime associate, inherited a fragile system. But rather than steer the club back to stability, he amplified the problems. If Rosell planted the seeds of Barcelona's downfall, Bartomeu was the one who watered and nurtured the chaos until it became a full-blown crisis. When Bartomeu officially took over the presidency, many fans still held hope for a return to Barcelona's footballing roots: La Masia, identity, and long-term planning. Instead, what they got was a president more concerned with commercial expansion than sporting excellence. On the surface, things looked good. In 2015, Barcelona completed a historic treble: La Liga, Copa del Rey, and the Champions League, led by the iconic attacking trio of Messi, Suarez, and Neymar, MSN. The team was dazzling on the pitch, and Bartomeu basked in the glory. But behind the scenes, a dangerous pattern was emerging: reckless spending and panic buys. Bartomeu began spending at an unsustainable pace: lavish fees, inflated wages, and a complete lack of sporting direction. Instead of using Barcelona's record revenues to solidify a sustainable future, he gambled on short-term success and blockbuster signings. The summer of 2017 marked a turning point. Discontent behind closed doors pushed Neymar toward the exit. Eager to escape Messi's shadow and establish himself as a global superstar, the Brazilian jumped ship. Paris Saint-Germain triggered his €222 million release clause, leaving Barcelona stunned and scrambling. The club had never imagined a team would pay that much for a single player. They were woefully unprepared. Rather than take time to recalibrate, Barcelona panicked, spending massive amounts in desperation. First came Ousmane Dembélé, a raw but talented 20-year-old from Borussia Dortmund, signed for €105 million plus €40 million in add-ons. Dembélé had just completed one breakout season in Germany. While his speed and flair were undeniable, the weight of Neymar's legacy proved too much. Just a few games into his debut season, Dembélé tore his hamstring. It was the beginning of a nightmare stretch plagued by recurring muscle injuries and inconsistent form. In total, he would miss over 140 games during his time at the club. Then came Philippe Coutinho in January 2018, another panic signing, this time for €120 million plus €40 million in bonuses. It remains Barcelona's most expensive transfer, but instead of becoming the creative heartbeat of the team, Coutinho floundered. At Liverpool, he was a central playmaker. At Barcelona, he was shoehorned into wide positions that didn't suit his game. His confidence dipped, his influence faded. Within a year, he was reduced to a squad player, eventually loaned out to Bayern Munich, where he would ironically score against Barcelona in their infamous 8-2 Champions League defeat. In just 6 months, Bartomeu and his board had spent the entire Neymar windfall, and Barcelona were worse off than before. No clear identity, no replacements who could deliver, and a bloated wage bill that spiraled out of control. As if the failed transfers of Dembélé and Coutinho weren't damaging enough, Barcelona doubled down on risky decisions. In 2019, the club made yet another high-profile move, signing Antoine Griezmann from Atletico Madrid for €120 million by activating his release clause. But even that move came with controversy. Atletico accused Barcelona of negotiating with Griezmann while his clause was still set at €200 million, demanding compensation beyond the €120 million that was paid. The question was Griezmann the right fit? Not even close. On the pitch, Griezmann never found his rhythm at Camp Nou. Despite flashes of brilliance, he failed to gel with Messi and looked uncomfortable in the system. After just 2 underwhelming seasons, Barcelona sold him back to Atletico Madrid for a mere €20 million, a staggering €100 million loss. And the same story repeated itself. Coutinho? Gone to Aston Villa for just €20 million after 4 frustrating seasons. Dembélé? Off to Paris Saint-Germain for €50 million, less than half of what Barcelona had invested. 3 massive transfers, hundreds of millions spent, very little returned. The person at the heart of this collapse? Josep Maria Bartomeu. He wasn't a football man. He was a businessman, or rather, a reckless one. His decision-making in the transfer market was chaotic at best and clueless at worst. But the problem wasn't limited to just a few headline names. Between 2014 and 2020, Bartomeu spent over €1 billion on new signings, and the majority of those players never delivered. Here's a quick look at the flops and forgettable faces. Jeremy Mathieu, $20 million. Andre Gomes, $35 million. Malcolm, $41 million. Arda Turan, $34 million. Nelson Semedo, $35 million. Paco Alcácer, $30 million. Paulinho, $40 million, and more. €1 billion spent, and almost nothing built. But the spending didn't stop at the transfer fees. The real killer was the wage bill. By the time Bartomeu left, Barcelona's wage structure had ballooned to over €600 million per year, the highest in football history. The club was shelling out more money in salaries than it was bringing in as revenue, and no one seemed to be doing the math. Some examples of Bartomeu's reckless wage policy. Samuel Umtiti earning €200,000 per week, barely playing. Coutinho earning over €400,000 per week, often injured or benched. Aging stars like Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba earning €400,000 and €250,000 per week, respectively. And then there was Lionel Messi. His jaw-dropping 4-year deal worth $555 million was the tipping point. Even though Messi earned every penny on a performance level, the club simply couldn't afford it anymore. Under Bartomeu's leadership, the numbers didn't add up. The decisions made no sense. And even worse, the results on the pitch began to reflect the chaos behind the scenes. Barcelona wasn't just struggling off the field, it was visibly falling apart on it. Despite fielding one of the most expensive squads in football history, Barcelona repeatedly failed to perform on the biggest stage. The problems were no longer just in the boardroom or on the balance sheets. They were showing up under the brightest lights in Europe. In 2018, Barcelona faced AS Roma in the UEFA Champions League quarter-finals. After a 4-1 win at the Camp Nou, the Catalans looked destined for the semi-finals. But the return leg in Rome turned into a nightmare. Roma scored 3 unanswered goals, sending shockwaves through the football world and eliminating Barcelona on the away goals rule. That defeat was bad, but what came next was worse. In 2019, Barcelona squared off against Liverpool in the semi-finals. Once again, the first leg looked promising. A dominant 3-0 victory at home gave Barça a commanding lead. All they had to do was avoid a major collapse at Anfield. But history repeated itself, this time even more dramatically. Liverpool, missing both Mohamed Salah and Roberto Firmino, still managed to score 4 goals without reply. The defining moment came from a quick-thinking Trent Alexander-Arnold, who caught Barcelona's defense napping with a now iconic corner that led to the 4th goal. Final score, 4-0, another shocking exit, another mental breakdown. But even those defeats couldn't prepare fans for what was coming next. In 2020, the humiliation reached its peak. During a single-leg quarter-final clash, forced by the pandemic-era format, Barcelona were demolished 8-2 by Bayern Munich. This wasn't just a defeat, it was a public execution of the club's footballing identity. Barcelona had never looked more disjointed, more disorganized, or more broken. And while the team was falling apart on the pitch, the world off the pitch was crumbling too. Just before the COVID-19 pandemic, Barcelona were confident in their financial plans. The club forecasted €1.59 billion in revenue for the 2019-20 season, an amount that would have made them the highest-earning sports team in the world. But then the museum tours stopped, sponsorships dried up, TV deals shrank. Barcelona lost an estimated €203 million in projected revenue. Their actual This was a financial catastrophe. The cracks that Bartomeu's regime had papered over for years were now gaping holes. No money, no trophies, no direction. Barcelona was in free fall. So, what did Josep Maria Bartomeu think of the chaos he left behind? Shockingly, Bartomeu believed that once football returned to normal after the pandemic, Barcelona's finances would bounce back. He continued to operate as if everything was fine, most notably with the baffling swap deal between Arthur and Miralem Pjanic, a financially motivated move that made little footballing sense and did nothing to improve the squad. But by October 27, 2020, the pressure became too much. Bartomeu and his entire board resigned. For many fans, it was a long overdue exit, but the damage had already been done. Bartomeu had left Barcelona in ruins, on the pitch and in the books. In 2021, club elections brought back Joan Laporta, who had previously overseen Barcelona's golden era in the 2000s. Upon his return, Laporta held a press conference to reveal the truth. Barcelona was in €1.35 billion of debt, a staggering figure that painted a grim picture of what Bartomeu's leadership had done to the club. And then came the biggest heartbreak of all. Barcelona's debt crisis made it impossible to renew Lionel Messi's contract, even though Messi had agreed to a significant pay cut to stay. La Liga's strict salary cap regulations meant Barcelona simply couldn't register him without breaking the rules. In August 2021, Messi's departure became official. The Argentine legend gave a tearful farewell at a press conference, visibly shaken by the reality of leaving the club he had joined as a teenager. A few days later, he signed with Paris Saint-Germain on a free transfer. With Messi gone, Laporta had no time to mourn. His job now was survival. Operation Rescue Barcelona. His first step, slashed the club's massive wage bill. Laporta convinced senior players to take pay cuts. Others were sold or loaned to reduce expenses. Antoine Griezmann was loaned back to Atletico Madrid. Pjanic went to Besiktas. Umtiti agreed to a compensation payout to leave. These were necessary, if painful, moves. Still, the club needed immediate cash to keep operations running. In summer 2021, Laporta made appeals to American investment firm Sixth Street, securing a €207 million injection of funds. This helped the club register new signings, pay off long-term survival. To manage the remaining debt, Laporta struck deals with banks and creditors to restructure repayments, buying Barcelona time to rebuild. With the Messi era over, Laporta and the club turned toward rebuilding the squad. He pursued low-cost options like Memphis Depay, Sergio Aguero, and Eric Garcia, while also investing smartly in Ferran Torres from Manchester City in early 2022. More importantly, he began to return to Barcelona's roots, La Masia. Young talents like Pedri, Gavi, and Ansu Fati became central to the team's future. Instead of chasing overpriced signings, Barcelona started trusting its academy again, looking to grow organically rather than buying success. What happened to FC Barcelona was no accident. It was a decade-long series of decisions, driven by greed, short-term thinking, and ego, that brought a footballing giant to its knees. But with new leadership, a renewed focus on youth, and careful financial restructuring, Barcelona is slowly finding its way back. It's still a long road ahead. The scars of Bartomeu's presidency won't heal overnight, but for the first time in years, there's a sense that Barcelona has a direction, and perhaps a future worth believing in again.